Welcome to A Night for Truth, conversations with Dr. Alice von Hildebrand about the work of her husband, Dietrich von Hildebrand, the great Catholic philosopher and theologian of the 20th century. We have been considering many of the topics which he touches upon and opens up in his great work, Transformation in Christ. And we come now to the topic of holy mercy, the divine mercy, which is, we might say, an attribute par excellence of God, because all of us live and move and have our being because of His sustaining mercy. Most of the time we either ignore it or give it a nod once in a while, but we forget that it is of His mercy that we continue in being even. What would you say is a starting point to get one's foot into this tremendous and rich topic of the divine mercy?
You know, I do believe one of the things that my husband highlights very beautifully is that it is a divine virtue par excellence. It is first and primarily a divine virtue, and only in analogical sense a Christian virtue. The second thing that he emphasizes is that mercy is a magnificent virtue that plays no role in natural ethics. You know, when you read Plato, when you read Aristotle, when you read, good pagans, the question of mercifulness is something which doesn't enter into the scope, because, actually, we can exercise mercy, we understand the greatness of mercy simply because we experience the infinite mercy that God has towards us. This is something which needs to be emphasized. It is essentially supernatural and accessible only, through revelation, in its fullness, in its full beauty. Otherwise you have some sort of a very faint copy of it, but not the authentic, lovable virtue which mercy is.
It's interesting. I just recently finished teaching a course in Greek epic and tragedy, and also Latin, Virgil's Aeneid. And one of the questions that I found myself putting to the class, these were European Roman Catholic graduate students, and one of the questions that I found myself putting to the class again and again was this: are the Greek gods merciful in the sense that we would mean that, we Christians? Zeus, for example, could and would feel sorry for somebody. He was a rather capricious god, or Hera, the queen of the gods, or Artemis. They could feel sorry for someone, Achilles or somebody else, but I would have a difficult time saying that those gods were anything that we could call merciful in any sense that's analogous to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Very much as humility is a virtue that cannot be found among pagans, and so it's a virtue, mercy in the sense in which we're going to discuss it, is something that you cannot find. What you are alluding to is a virtue that can be found on a natural level, even though it is totally transfigured on the supernatural level, namely compassion.
Compassion.
And compassion comes from the Latin word compatire, to suffer with.
To suffer with, yeah.
Now, what my husband does do is to show that there's a very radical difference between compassion and mercy. Mercy implies necessarily and essentially that the merciful person is in a superior position. For example, I owe you money, and because I owe you money, I'm in an inferior situation towards you, and in your kindness and generosity, you cancel my debt. You are in a superior position. I cannot say to you, you ought to cancel my debt. I can't say that, but you in your goodness can say, well, I know that you're in a difficult situation, I will cancel it. In the case of compassion, The person that you are compassionate with, that you suffer with, need in no way be superior to you. It can be your equal. It could be superior to you, but insofar as you practice or you exercise compassion, the question of being superior or inferior is irrelevant. In that case, I'm responding to your suffering. And out of love, I suffer with you. You know, this is something that we can contemplate forever when we meditate on what is happening at Calvary. The Holy Virgin could not take away the immense sorrow and suffering of her Son, but she suffered with him. And I mean, this is so typical of love. If you refuse to suffer with another person, you do not truly love. And if you love this person, you want to suffer with this particular person. So therefore, in one case, you find yourself in a situation of superiority. In the other case, it need not be the case at all. In one case, you can help. In the other case,
mercy.
You can cancel a debt, but in case of compassion, unfortunately, in so many cases, there's nothing that you can do. You see, and therefore, when you're next to a dying person that you love, there's nothing that you can do to alleviate his suffering. All that you can do is to say to God, give him grace, help him. I mean, you can pray, but you cannot help in a concrete sense.
In a sense, compassion speaks from a status of equal weakness with the person. The best I can do is to suffer with or feel with you. You know, it's an interesting point. Your point about the quality of mercy being that it flows from someone who is in a position to help. At least two of Shakespeare's plays ring the changes on this. Of course, the most famous one is The Merchant of Venice. The quality of mercy is nothing. The other one is Measure for Measure. And the appeal in both situations, but especially in Measure for Measure, where a very, very, very strict surrogate has been appointed to rule the city while the Duke is absent. And he is just going to, as the Americans say, throw the book at them. I mean, he is going to really tidy things up and punish to the ultimate any infractions of the rules. And Isabella, who is the main character in the story, begs Angelo to show mercy to her brother who has offended. And both the implication, and I think it's explicit actually in Shakespeare as well, there is something profoundly kingly about the exercise of mercy. Not only does a king not lose his dignity and his authority and his power by exercise mercy, he shows up as more kingly than you could have imagined. A merciful king is infinitely more majestic than a tyrant.
Well, obviously, not just someone who exercises justice, strict justice. Yeah. You see, from this point of view, at first hand, there seems to be a conflict between justice and mercy. It's a paradox, because mercy doesn't offend against justice; it transcends it.
That's crucial. It seems to me that mercy doesn't offend against justice. It doesn't undo justice. It doesn't do violence to it or cancel it. It transcends it. And there's a sense in which justice is magnificently and fruitfully satisfied when mercy is exercised.
Well, and this is when you notice in the Catholic liturgy, you could truly count how often the word mercy is used. And now what is very upsetting, I don't know if you've noticed this, I mean, you are a young Catholic and I'm a very old Catholic because I was baptized and entered the church at the age of 3 days. My father couldn't stand the thought of having a child that was unbaptized. And up to Vatican II, you know, the word mercy occurred constantly in the liturgy. Now it is replaced by kindness. which is something, in other words, the very nerve, the very core of mercy, this generosity, this nobility, is something which is watered down. You know, beware of translations, because many of them are actually betrayals of the original meaning. You know, God is kind, and I can also be kind. You know, I'm kind to someone, I hold the door for someone, and I'm kind. You see, mercy implies precisely that the other person could crush me. He's entitled to, you know, because I haven't paid my debts. And nevertheless, in his generosity and kindness, he cancels it. Yeah.
Kindness or kindliness, it's a lovely word and it's a lovely virtue, but it is a much weaker word.
You know, today it becomes so wishy-washy.
No. Well, that's it. It doesn't lead into, it doesn't open the shutter into this tremendous and splendid realm where mercy presides. That is a royal realm.
Absolutely. This is why it belongs to God par excellence. You know, yesterday we spoke about humility. Humility is a most becoming virtue to creatures. That's where we belong. And somehow we make ourselves metaphysically ridiculous when we are proud or haughty or suddenly believe that and the rest of it.
Yeah.
It does not apply to God. You cannot say, but God in his infinite condescendence and generosity has chosen that his son should become man and therefore choose a humble condition. So you can speak of the humility of the God-man, but you cannot speak of the humility of the Holy Trinity. You know, that is sort of very funny. Whereas in the case of mercy, mercy is a divine attribute par excellence, this sort of magnificence, this generosity, you know, that transcends justice and simultaneously, you know, bends down towards the person who is in need and pulls him up of his difficulty. Now, you see, today we live in a world of confusion. We live in a world in which things are watered down to such an extent that sometimes I have a feeling it is a sheer caricature. And in the world in which we live, you will notice how often the word mercy is used when it should not be used at all. For example, you yield to the illegitimate desire of someone. You know, he wants something from you and it is illegitimate. Now, if you truly care for this person, you should always refuse to yield to an illegitimate wish. You know, for example, says he wanted to lie with me so badly, you know, and I was kind and merciful towards him, and I would have felt so badly if I said no. You sort of this wishy-washy kindness that people see as mercy.
All right, you know, this is something which is celebrated on Broadway or the West End in London, or let's say in modern drama, the prostitute with the heart of gold. That is to say, her whole motivation is to give comfort and pleasure and warmth and intimacy and so on to some poor sailor or some poor lonely man and so on. And the tremendous dislocation and chaos of the act is lost in this sentimental or schmaltz overwash. The notion being, but this is a lovely thing. Irma la Douce, you know, she's it's a heart of gold in there. And from the Christian point of view, one would have to say that's not what we mean by mercy.
You know, my husband relates in his memoir one of the things that obviously I could not mention in my book. That he was working in a hospital in the First World War, and this is when he escaped from being drafted until the very end. And there was a hospital for rehabilitation in Munich, soldiers that had been wounded and were recovering. And it was in the hands of nuns. As soon as they got a little bit better, they started carousing and inviting girls from the outside and having a good time. And all of a sudden an officer or a superior heard about this, and they said to Mother Superior, you know, we are going to come on Saturday and surprise them and then put things in order. And she felt so sorry for the poor soldiers that were going to be, punished or whatever it was, that she warned them. And she said, tonight there's going to be a control. People are going to check upon what they're doing. And when they came, everything was in most perfect order, and they left saying, this was simply a case of slander. She felt so sorry for them. She felt she had such a kind and loving heart, you see. She was so merciful.
Yeah. Well, that's the, as I say, this sort of sentimental overwash that gets
But you see, Chesterton says, if you don't have a right religion, you're going to have a false religion. Right. And I simply say, if you are not trained to develop right feelings, you're going to have a wrong feeling.
A person listening in, a person who is not familiar with the Mass, listening in, even if briefly, supposing he leaves after the first 10 minutes, that he will have heard the people saying, Kyrie eleison, Christe eleison, Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy. And they might conclude, well, that must be a terribly ferocious God you have. You're always hanging on his garment and pulling his sleeve and begging for mercy, not realizing that those words which have been put into our mouths by the liturgy, it isn't a question of hopelessly pawing the sleeve of the Most High and hoping maybe he'll be nice for once. It's a statement of supplication, but also a statement of what is true. We declare that we ask him to have mercy, but it's on the basis that he has had mercy. The whole Eucharistic liturgy celebrates the mercy of God.
Therefore, this beautiful parable, I believe it is in the Gospel of St. Luke, of this man who has a heavy debt towards his master, and the man is merciful and remits his debt. And then he meets a fellow servant who has a very small debt towards him, and he chokes him and says, if you don't pay back, then I'm just going to bring you to justice. And the master hears about this and then says, how dare you do that to your fellow servant when I have cancelled your debt, and you should have done the same thing. This is so profound because we live on God's mercy. Probably I hope that on my deathbed my last words would be, have mercy on me, O Lord. I, sinner, have mercy on me. I am not worthy of your justice, but I totally expect that you're going to be merciful towards me. And so the teaching is, if God is so infinitely merciful, and all he asks for us at the moment of death to say, have mercy on me, O Lord, and I don't apply justice to my fellow man, then obviously I don't deserve justice myself.
It's interesting if anyone has the inclination, which I'm afraid I have a very big dose of, namely of recrimination or retaliation or tit for tat or vituperation, wanting to get back and get even and register the fact that someone has offended me and just extract some little debt from them. And then you think of what is the basis on which I think I will ever make it into the presence of the Most High? That's mercy. Well, then what in the world am I doing being so vituperative or so vindictive? I'm denying.
You show it so beautifully because it simply means, once again, without God's grace and the constant help of the sacrament, we can't do it. This is why I truly get upset when politicians sort of promise that we're going to have world peace. When you realize the hatred that exists between certain people, and I'm not going to be more specific, this cannot be achieved by natural means. You establish some sort of a frontier, and then within 5 years someone is going to cross the frontier, the whole thing is going to start all over again. God alone can change the human heart. And you see, there are of course enormous obstacles in myself against being merciful. And one of them, surprisingly enough, is mentioned quite explicitly by Plato in his last work that most people do not read because apparently his literary dynamism had weakened or something of the sort. But I consider one of his greater works, namely The Laws. He laments the hardness of the human heart.
Plato.
He laments the hardness of the human heart. No, of course, he couldn't give a solution. And the solution is simply to contemplate the infinite love and mercy of Christ. To pray the litany of the heart of Jesus, overflowing with love for us. Now, you take, for example, just a few days ago, we celebrated the Feast of the Holy Innocent. Now, let us just imagine the horror of the soldiers coming to Bethlehem. And you have this woman who is carrying their little child that they have carried in their womb, to whom they have given birth in pain and anguish and sorrow, and they hold the little child to their breast, and there comes a soldier tearing the child away from the mother, and she goes on her knees and says, I beg you, have mercy, it's my child. And there they go and put a dagger in the child. The horror of it, and this is something that happens constantly, the wickedness of the human heart unredeemed by God's grace. And the first thing to do is to realize my heart is hard. It is not so that I can say, well, I'm so loving and so on. I recall as a child, when I was raised in convent school, and it was a very old-fashioned building, and to go we had a magnificent garden, but to go there we had to go down and up and down. It was a very old-fashioned building. And when we came to the place where we were going to play for a half hour, it was always, make my heart like unto yours. The beauty of really make my heart like unto yours, because mine is hard, mine is dry, mine is selfish, mine is self-centered, and yours is infinite goodness. So even though, unfortunately, very few of us live up to the request of it, but at least, there was this request, my heart is hard. Or you take people, and this is another thing which is very widespread in our society, as long as I'm all right, why should I care about all the miseries of other people? You see, it's not that you are placed in the situation in which you do evil, it's in placed in the situation of saying, well, my life is quite nice and comfortable. If I start thinking about all the problems existing in the world, then I'm no longer going to enjoy myself. I know people who wear blinders because they feel that somehow if they started looking at what is going on in the world, they could no longer concentrate on their work. Somehow their life would be disrupted, you see. So the question is for us, and this is linked to the chapter on humility, to discover the hardness of the human heart and to say to God daily, I know my heart is as hard as a stone. Was it in Jeremiah who says, change my heart of stone into a heart of flesh? I think it's Jeremiah. But it is so, it is something that we must pray daily, because that is the case.
Yeah.
We cannot live in the illusion that we have kind and soft heart because we are sentimental. I do not know, of course, I don't think it could affect my husband's aesthetics because it is in German and untranslated, but he has one admirable chapter on sentimentality. The great defensor of feelings, his magnificent book on the heart, in which we've touched upon in a previous thing, the beauty of the heart, the beauty of love, the beauty of admiration, the beauty of veneration, and so on and so on. And simultaneously, I do not know anybody who has criticized as sharply as he has the sentimental deformation of feelings.
Wow.
And basically what is sentimentality? If you take admiration or veneration, it is a response to an object, deserving my admiration, deserving my love, deserving my veneration. And what happens in sentimentality is that you use the object as a sheer means to enjoy the satisfaction of something that's going on in this dull heart of yours.
Well, I think the confusion between authentic mercy, which oddly enough, it seems to me is a high and an austere thing, act, attitude, the blurring in our own epoch between that and sentimentalism is disastrous. The idea being, if some public figure has done wrong and so on, we sort of say, oh, well, I mean, we're all flawed and all of that. Well, that attitude carried all the way through is going to end up in moral chaos, whereas authentic mercy does not do violence, as you were saying earlier on, to justice and to the truth. Well, we must again bring our comments on this, our just, shall we say, introductory comments on this tremendous field of holy mercy. Let's bring these to a close. But I thank you, Dr. von Hildebrand, for the wonderful way that you illumine us about the work of your husband. And thank you all for joining us. Join us again in another episode of A Night for Truth.